So, how can one animal be both a biblical plague and an ecological savior? To one country, it's a creature so destructive they've spent 100 years trying to wipe it out. But to another, it's a workforce, a team of engineers, and the secret weapon in a war against desertification. We're talking about the humble rabbit, and this is the story of its two completely opposite reputations on planet Earth.
Okay, so on one side of the world, you've got Australia. They're battling an out-of-control population of 200 million rabbits. Officially, they're a pest. Then you look over at China. They intentionally brought in over 4 million rabbits, not as a problem, but as the solution to one. I mean, the contrast is just wild, right? One nation is fighting a war against them, while the other is recruiting them as an army. And that brings us to the big question, the one this whole story hinges on. What on earth did China know that Australia didn't? Well, the answer is a pretty incredible tale of ecological creativity, one that literally turned a sea of sand into a green oasis. To really get the solution, first you have to meet the villain of our story, the Kabuki Desert. It's in northern China, and for a very good reason. It had a much scarier name, the Sea of Death.
You see, the Kabuki was ground zero for something called desertification. It's basically when fertile, living land just gets swallowed up by an expanding desert. It's a massive environmental threat, and for a long time, China was losing that battle.
And the scale of this was just staggering. Every single year, the Sea of Death was eating up 500,000 acres of good land. People tried for decades, planting trees, building barriers, but the desert just kept winning. The sand was absolutely relentless. But then a local entrepreneur named Wang Wenbiao shows up with a plan so bold, people honestly thought he was crazy. He looked out at all that endless sand, and somehow, he saw a garden. His idea was actually pretty clever. He started by planting these grids of dried-out bushes to act as little walls against the harsh desert winds, and inside those protected squares he planted willow saplings. Now, willow trees are incredible survivors. Their roots can dig 300 feet deep just to find water. And for the first 3 years, it looked like a miracle. The trees were actually growing. But then he hit a roadblock, a big one. It turns out, for the willow wood to get thick enough to sell, the new branches needed constant trimming. And trying to send teams of people into the middle of a massive desert to prune trees, it was just way too difficult and expensive. It looked like the whole dream was about to die. And this is where the story takes a hard left turn. The solution to this really complex forestry problem wasn't some new machine or a bigger budget. No, it was something else entirely, something unexpected.
That's right, they used rabbits, and not just any rabbits either. They chose a specific breed called the Rex rabbit, which is known for its incredibly soft and very valuable fur.
And this one simple, brilliant idea created a perfect, self-sustaining loop. It wasn't just about saving the environment anymore. It was about building what scientists now call an eco-economic engine, a system where nature and business actually help each other grow. Okay, check out how this ingenious cycle worked. First, the rabbits did all the pruning for free. They just loved to nibble on those tender new willow shoots. This forced a tree's main trunks to grow thicker and stronger. In turn, those stronger roots grabbed hold of the sand, stopped it from blowing away, and locked in moisture. Then came the magic part. The rabbit waste acted like a super powerful fertilizer, turning dead sand into rich soil. And finally, the rabbits couldn't digest grass seeds, so their waste actually planted new grass all across the desert floor. And here's the kicker. Every single part of this cycle made money. The willow wood was now premium grade for furniture. The Rex rabbit fur was sold for luxury goods. The newly fertilized land was so rich they could grow organic vegetables on it. And the local people were encouraged to raise the rabbits, basically turning every home into a small farm and creating a whole new industry from scratch.
So, after 30 years of this experiment, what happened? Well, the results are nothing short of breathtaking. This project didn't just change a landscape, it completely transformed the lives of everyone who lived there.
Get this, over 6,000 square kilometers of the Kabuki Desert, an area that was just barren sand, is now green. According to the UN, that's a full third of the entire desert.
To back this up, the government invested $400 million, building new villages and infrastructure to create real, sustainable jobs for the local people.
But here's the number that really matters. An estimated 100,000 people have been lifted out of poverty. These were people who were forced to flee the desert, and now they were coming back to become farmers and entrepreneurs in this thriving new green economy.
But believe it or not, the story doesn't even end there. This whole idea of using nature to solve big problems just kept evolving. The innovation didn't stop with the soil.
So now picture this, the Jumna Solar Power Plant, built right in the middle of that same desert. But it's so much more than a power plant. The solar panels create shade, which reduces water evaporation and helps fight desertification. They plant grass underneath the panels to hold the soil together. And who do you think they hired to keep all that grass trimmed? Yep, you guessed it, an army of rabbit groundskeepers. And this just shows you all the layers of benefits. By 2022, the plant had saved almost 800,000 tons of coal and kept 1.8 million tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. On top of all that, the giant grid of panels actually slowed down the powerful desert winds by 50%, creating this calmer, more stable little climate where even more life could grow.
Which brings us to our final thought. The Kabugi Desert is proof that when we work with nature instead of against it, incredible things can happen. So the question we're left with is pretty simple. If this eco-economic model can transform a literal sea of death into a thriving oasis, just imagine, where else could this kind of thinking help us solve our world's biggest challenges?